I want to talk about the problem with games on Roblox. About 90% of the games on the front page use the same graphical style, are filled with microtransactions, and are generally not fun to play. I like to call them swap games. I would describe them as cheap, low-effort games that primary goal is to get as much money from the player as possible through microtransactions. They're also usually made with the help or almost entirely by AI. They're also games that overall copy the premise of another game. Those are the Roblox copycats that strive from the fame of those games you'll find on Steam. An example would be a game called Buckshot, which is pretty much a remake of Buckshot Roulette, among other games. In my opinion, if these games make money, they should be banned, because the idea of copying someone else's work and making money from it is really just sickening. However, they are very profitable because most players would rather stick to a free game rather than to buy it on Steam. I want you to imagine what an average Roblox player looks for a second. I will mention it is okay to create a game that is inspired by the original without ripping out the whole premise of the game. A good example would be a game called Tunneler. At first glance, it looks copied, however the game actually is quite original. It has an original storyline and also voice acting. Although the mechanics are the same as Portal, the levels are different too, and it has no game passes. So with that said, I don't think all games are bad. Actually, I would say I have played a few games that, if looking at Roblox as a whole, could be interpreted as masterpieces. So let's get into it. Shelf Street is a first-person story-driven single-player game. The development started in 2023 with the game releasing multiple versions or betas. The current version, which started development in February 2024, was finished and later released in May 2025, currently featuring only the first half of the first chapter. At a certain point, the game halted development and instead started being worked outside of Roblox in an engine called Godot, which is an open-source game engine that really got popular at the time when Unity decided to start charging people more. The reason why the developers wanted to change to Godot was due to problems with Roblox. In Shell Street, you play as Henry Brooks, who moves into a house located in Yukon, Canada. The game is fully voiced with the 13 distinct voice actors for the characters. The characters themselves are also very memorable with their own distinct personalities. You also get to make choices that change the outcome of what the characters say, kind of like a visual novel game. I will mention this. The game has some of the best visuals I have ever seen for a Roblox game, and yes, these are real screenshots I took from the game. Now, it being a story-driven game is a really good opening for a first chapter. Most, if not all, the assets are original and built by the developers. The unfortunate news, however, is that the game will no longer be developed. However, there is a final update that will be released sometime soon, but it won't add any new chapters. I don't know when, but I'll just pray to God it comes out. Identity Fraud is a survival horror game created on January 1st, 2016, very specific. In Identity Fraud, you have to escape mazes whilst being stalked by monsters. Later at the third chapter, or maze, you have to solve puzzles. The most fascinating thing about the game is its lack of a deep story. Well, yes, there is a story, but only some bits of it are mentioned at the start of the game. The now cancelled Identity Fraud 2 was being developed with the intention of telling the story at its fullest. However, in my opinion, it doesn't need a complex story. The reason I still come back to replay this game is its atmosphere and sound effects. The game really feels like you're trapped in a maze where you can't get out of. Although it uses lighting technology called Shadow Map, it still remains to look very good with what is presented. I also want to give props to the original soundtrack composed by the developer. It uses half electronic instruments and half real instruments. You can listen to it on Spotify and YouTube Music, go check it out. It's like the type of music put on whilst you try to sleep. The most recent major update was released in 2026 to celebrate 10 years of the game being out. It introduces a complete maze tree overhaul and changes how some monsters work. So if you have played this game in the past and wrote it off as being boring, then it's definitely worth checking out again. I also have to mention no AI was used whilst making the game. Also, a side note, the AMD recording software used to record the game left the cursor on screen on top of the crosshair, so please do yourself a favor and switch to OBS. It will be worth it. Doors is a roguelite survival horror game that can be played either multiplayer or by yourself. Most of you already played the game at this point. It was first created back in 2021 and exploded on the front page, and for good reason. It is inspired by another Roblox game called Rooms and a Steam game called Spooky's House of Jump Scares. In both games and doors, you have to escape a set of rooms while also being hunted by the so-called entities, aka monsters. The game is still actually in development with the final third floor yet to be released. Doors is extremely replayable because the map changes every playthrough. My personal favorite room is the Vine Cellar, and even that room changes within. The mechanics are also both thought through and satisfying, and so are the gorgeous visuals. The game is straight proof that graphics don't have to be realistic to look good. It also makes the graphical style stand out. Sound design is also a very huge part of the game. Indoors, you can hear the rain through the windows whilst looking for items. However, you will die in the game, a lot, but you'll still want to come back for more. Entry Point is a first-person action game made back in 2017, with all the main missions finished in 2021. You play as an operator for an organization called LAKEY. Each mission is a mix of Hitman because of the stealth mechanics and Payday 2 because of the combat and gunplay. When you start, you have to create a character that is fully customizable with different hairstyles, shades, and clothing. There are 4 character classes to choose from, like the Thief, which is good for stealth, or Engineer that lets you access explosive tools that let you blow up a wall or something. The game has very memorable characters and a fantastic and deep story about the fight of both organizations LAKEY and Phoenix, with a great ending. Currently, the developer is working on a remake called Freelancer's Cut, which aims to rework the mechanics. The game truly is well made and stands out on Roblox. I'm 100% sure there are more games like this on Roblox that I haven't played yet. The games I mentioned except for Doors are kind of like hidden gems and don't get as many players as they should. Please comment on what games are like this and that I should play, because Roblox is actually a fantastic platform for developers to create games. But this is only one of the problems with Roblox, and I think for the most part it will never change. I'm not even going to talk about the Predator situation.